to In the Hot Seat. I'm Meg Muir, and it's great to be with you. Today, we have a really exciting episode ahead where we're going to dive deeper and unpack what's going on in the world of driver recruiting and retention. And in order to do that, we have a very special guest with us today, Beth Potratz. Beth, a little bit about her. She is the co founder, president, and CEO of Drive My Way. And Beth has 25 years of experience. She actually has a background as an HR executive, and she's really disrupting the truck driver recruiting world by treating the driver as a consumer in the employment relationship and making recruiting personal again. So, Beth, welcome to the show.
Hey, Meg. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to speak with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. We're excited for everything that you have to share with the audience today as well. So maybe kick us off, Beth, with a little bit of an introduction on you and your background, and even maybe a little bit of what you did before you founded this company.
Yeah, so I'm a lifelong HR professional. I really started as a generalist and kind of went deep into all elements of talent acquisition, organization development, and a lot of change management and transformation work. Most things that were the intersect between people and technology and trying to
Hmm.
get things accomplished. I started my career in consumer products
Hmm.
and moved on to industrial automation at Rockwell Automation, and then ended up also working at Unilever quite a lot of my career from in the consumer products industry. I came up with this idea actually years ago when I was trying to recruit engineers to move to Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, this is like the late 90s, when the war for talent started and we were still trying to figure out how to introduce cafeteria benefit plans. So I thought, employers are going to have to start viewing employees as consumers in the employment relationship because their needs are going to change throughout their career.
Hmm.
And it can't just be a one size fits all package. So that was way ahead of its time. But fast forward, when I started my own HR consulting firm, I was helping a large carrier redesign their driver recruiting process and thought, you know what, this is the perfect opportunity. It's about time that we really make hiring personal again for people. And this day and age, everybody's expecting a personalized experience in everything we do, even ordering coffee at Starbucks. So why shouldn't your recruiting experience be the same? And I also think it's important for recruiters to start to have a way to begin recruiting the way they themselves would like to be recruited.
Yeah, I love that. And the personal connection and ability to build trust as you're forming that engagement, it's so important. So maybe share with the audience a little bit more about Drive My Way and the work that you do there.
Yeah, so Drive My Way, like I said, we actually have a personalized recruiting solution that matches truck drivers with jobs based on the truck driver's professional qualifications and personal lifestyle preferences. So we work with company drivers looking for, full-time W-2 positions or owner operators looking to lease themselves on with organizations. And on the carrier side, we work with both for hire fleets as well as private carriers, and we match them up with drivers who meet the minimum qualifications of the job, but also with drivers who are inclined to want their offering because it fits their lifestyle preferences. So we have a unique combination of technology and services together to help them with an end-to-end solution.
That's wonderful. Great. So I know this space, the transportation world, it's certainly changed and evolved a lot over the last year, year and a half, really 3 years, right? But even if we just focus on the last year, year and a half, the industry has faced just so many various challenges. Softer demand, lower rates, obviously the macro economy and impact there, and in general uncertainty. But then rising operating costs, right? It's harder to operate today as a trucking company or even a brokerage entity than it has been in years past. Maybe talk a little bit about how that's impacted the driver recruiting and retention front.
Yeah, it's actually had quite an impact. And I feel the industry kind of went through a big challenge like this back during COVID. Here we face a little bit of a different problem, but certainly what's happened on the recruiting front is folks have frozen their recruiting budgets. Many have stopped hiring altogether or just really slowed down the hiring significantly. Many felt that they had enough of candidates that they'd already engaged with that they could fill the whatever little turnover they may be having at this point in time. So we've seen a significant change in the approach for recruiting. In many cases, it's non-existent at this point. And people turning and focusing on the retention side. Um, Things are starting to feel like to pick back up again, and they will continue to. But typically, the natural reaction is, hey, we're not hiring right now.
Hmm.
So why should we bother to engage? We've seen a lot of folks, unfortunately, get caught up in layoffs, a lot of
Hmm.
reductions in force last couple weeks, actually months. And, with a scaled down recruiting effort, you don't need as large of a team. So
Sure.
the emphasis has been on, and we need that much. We've pulled back the spend. Let's just talk with the folks that we've had in the past. The concern though is when you're not recruiting, that doesn't mean, or not hiring, it doesn't mean you should stop recruiting. You always need to be recruiting. You always need your brand out there, and we know it's going to pick up back up again. It's just a matter of when. So the people that are going to win at it are the ones that are out there continuing to have conversations. It may not be the right time for someone to make a move right now, but being able to initially make that connection and nurture that relationship, when it is time and for them to make a move, then you'll be able to secure the talent ahead of others. Too often, I think we get reactionary and look at recruiting like it's a faucet. You can't just turn it on and off. I mean, and it's okay to be
Sure.
totally upfront and transparent, frankly, because even those that are looking may not be willing to make a move right now, anyways. So you want to just strike up the conversation now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's a lot like our commercial side of the house, right? You have to have a solid pipeline that is always filled and have optionality in the market because even succession planning and retirement, you don't know when that's coming. And so you want to have options available to you and make sure that it's a good fit. And sometimes those relationships do take a long time to nurture and make sure it's the right fit for the employee and also the employer.
That's right. And you mentioned the commercial side. I mean, the carriers right now, everybody's getting fit, right? We start with, tightening our belts, looking at expenses. Folks are evaluating their fleet. They're selling off old equipment. They're looking at what kind of new equipment they're going to purchase. If they're doing, as they should be, extensive workforce planning, they're looking at analyzing what their turnover has been in various different locations. They're sizing up their current capacity with what's in the sales pipeline and what they're going to
Hmm.
be able to handle going forward. What do they need in terms of talent, measuring, sort of aligning your talent strategy with your organizational strategy. And then the other piece is diving into the age of the fleet, how many drivers are looking to retire in the forecast, and what do we need to do to be prepared, because all of those things need to factor into what your recruiting strategy is going to be going forward.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. So maybe talk a little bit about 2024 and what are you seeing as, key trends in 24 or even advice maybe that you would give owners of trucking companies trying to recruit drivers for the upcoming year.
Yeah, I'm absolutely having lots of conversations of carriers of all sizes, frankly, and talking to people about the need to stay out there in the market in some way, making sure that you are using this time as an opportunity to continue to have brand awareness and build upon it, and to be creating conversations with drivers, even if you're knowing equipment's on order, it's not coming in until the spring, what have you. You can
Hmm.
start having conversations now and lining people up for future hire dates. Um,
Sure.
that's always good to do. The other piece is just the huge emphasis on retention. Right
Hmm.
now is the time, not just now, but always, frankly, is the time you're always needing to re recruit the people that already work for you.
Sure.
It's important, especially when there's this much uncertainty. Drivers aren't seeing, the loads and the mileage that maybe they have in the past, um, this time of year. And you want to have open, honest communications,
Hmm.
with your fleet of drivers, finding out what's on people's mind, what are they experiencing out there, and talking about what the organization's doing about it, and giving as much as you can transparency into, how you're sort of managing the business and making sure that people are getting the miles, and, kind of what your plans are for growth as a company, so that
Yeah.
you're bringing people along with you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. So many trucking companies spend so much time, resources in the recruiting efforts, and then not an equal amount of time and effort on the retention side of the house. So I really appreciate that, commentary and the level of importance that needs to be also placed on retaining the current workforce. What do you see? I'm just curious. Your best in class carriers that you're working with, the retention levels obviously vary pretty significantly from carrier to carrier, but the industry as a whole, right? That's not our strong suit. So, any trends that you see of best in class carriers and what they're doing is something that might be special that they're doing on the retention front to keep their employees happy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are people that are using surveys, to engage with folks. I'm seeing people they're trying to figure out how to do it, but at least they're asking all the right questions, where they're starting, driver councils,
Mhm.
creating, whether it's a town hall meeting, or, a lunch with the CEO, or whatever the engagement platform is.
Yeah,
We're trying to create those conversations. We've
sure.
seen people take to Facebook for
Uh-huh.
enclosed groups, so that leadership can address the drivers. But the ones that are really doing well are the ones that are allowing for that two-way communication.
Right.
And making the team that's out there, the boots on the ground, making things happen, getting their perspective in the room, and allowing leadership to have conversation with them and address those items, so that they feel a part of kind of helping the leaders manage through these times.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too as you think about the incoming generation of truck drivers, right? It's already hard to recruit and replace those that are retiring in this space, but the incoming driver base might feel differently than the previous generations in terms of the type of engagement and communication and frequency that they are interested in, right? And so I think even COVID and coming out of COVID, our ability to connect with teams in a remote fashion or an async workforce, it's really opened a lot of creative doors to help foster those communications and conversations with those drivers that are interested in communicating with the corporate office in that fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, so there, it's their need, or I should say even expectation of that's
Mhm.
going to, challenge all of us to rise up and start doing things a little differently, in order to be
Absolutely.
able to attract and retain talent. There's a lot of folks looking at their diversity inclusion efforts. They're looking at the culture. What kind of culture do we want to have? Does the our vision, mission, values, and the culture that we have, how is it playing out in real life every day? What does it look like in action? What can we do to fortify that? People are trying to increase employee engagement during these times when we're looking at reducing costs and streamlining things. How do we get
Yep.
people on the team and actually involved in creating new innovations and ideas for the business,
Sure.
so that we can grow together? So those are the things that are happening, and the leaders that are tapping into it. Fleets of all sizes obviously are making sure that, and doing, sort of um, performance reviews at this time of year,
Mhm.
certainly, and looking at succession planning, and looking at
Yep.
making sure that they have the right talent on board. Um,
Mhm.
Not just, at the driver level, the fleet, but with all the supporting functions, and making sure that, we have the right people in the right roles to take us forward. Which in
Right.
some cases, it's build, buy, or borrow. You either, make
Yeah.
commitments to build and invest in the talent that you have, because,
Yeah.
I think we're seeing more interest, which is not typical in this industry. But, what investment are we making in some of our high performing, up and coming leaders, to
Talent.
prepare
Yeah.
them? Yeah. And then,
Absolutely.
sometimes we have to buy and borrow the talent as well, especially the smaller organizations who need the A team with all the experience but don't have the budget to support that, or support full-time resources. We're seeing a lot of
Yeah.
people tapping into fractional work or
Yeah.
fractional
Sure.
roles. So I think whatever we can do to build each other up and help, connect each other, especially when there's some great talent available out in the market right now. I
Yep.
think, folks that have a need, even if it's on a fractional basis, can really get a lot out of it by partnering
Yeah,
with folks.
help bolster an organization and their performance, right? Especially if they're subject matter experts in their given area of expertise. That's absolutely a way to do it.
That's right.
So you mentioned surveys, and that one's I think really unique because you can get now there's so many different platforms that can integrate with TMS systems even that you can get real time information and data pretty easily and quickly, and being able to survey or do pulse surveys with a group of drivers, I can see how valuable that would be over time. And I love the work that you're doing at Drive My Way because one of the areas that you guys really specialize in and produce a lot of interesting and meaningful data from is your driver happiness report. And so I would love for you to share a little bit more with the audience around what is the driver happiness report. And then maybe what are some of the key takeaways from the report that just released in 2023?
Yeah, so we started this driver happiness report back in 2019. And of course, a lot has changed in the industry. We've been through a lot together since 2019.
Yes.
So we reintroduced it again in 2023. And kind of some of the major takeaways are that overall driver happiness has dropped since 2019. In
Okay.
particular, with those drivers that have 1 to 2 years of experience, seeming to be the least happy of all,
Wow.
which is
Okay.
tough because we're in an industry where we're trying to attract people to join
Right.
truck
Exactly.
driving as a profession. So
Yeah.
we want to, disengage them from the beginning. Um,
Sure.
and the second thing is we saw that nearly 44% of drivers that reported that they're actually happy now, sort of
Oh,
end of 2023, they've all looked for a job in the last 3 months. Not that they're out
wow.
ready to make a move or jump, but everybody's looking. Now, why are they looking? A, they could be looking because they themselves are seeing fewer loads or miles, kind of hearing from their leadership, here's what's going on with our company, or hearing from other drivers, just wanting to check it out and see sort of what's happening out there, who's hiring. Some may
Sure.
be saying, hey, this isn't, I'm not getting out of this relationship what I want to be, or I'm not growing, or whatever their goal is. So they're out taking a look at, who's
Gotcha.
hiring and what's coming up in the future to prepare themselves, so they're not going to make a rash decision, starting to investigate a
Yeah.
bit. um, so that's a little scary, that even though people think that, the folks that they have, and they're reporting that they're perfectly happy where they are, but yet they're still looking.
Sure.
So that's a concern from a retention standpoint. And then third, and to me, this is probably, you touched on it a little, Meg, the most um, sort of sobering of all the feedback, and that
Hmm.
is the number two area that drivers reported that their company could do better in was to increase their happiness, was to be able to be better at communication and listening from management, which you would
Mm,
expect in any discipline. Pay is going to be in
exactly.
the top.
Yeah.
We always see that in top five. Certainly
Yeah.
with drivers, we even see equipment up in the top five.
Sure. Yeah.
But boy,
Home time, right? We hear home
home
time a lot.
time, route
Yeah.
schedule, all of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, ranked number two was this better communication and listening from management. And it's interesting because nearly 61% of them have been in their role for less than 2 years, and twice as many of those were women than men. So we're seeing
Mm,
a very different expectation from, sort of this next generation coming into the industry. And, it just illustrates that, people are not the same. They have different needs, and we need to be able to diversify our approach.
sure.
Women versus men, newer
Yeah.
in the industry versus, more experienced, et cetera. So those are the three main things. And I think it's a good time, because this is when leadership, has an opportunity to start diving in a little bit to make sure that they're getting the right feedback from their own folks, so that when the market ticks back up again, and, if we didn't learn anything from COVID, was, don't stop recruiting, because
Right.
when everything picks
Yeah.
back up again, it's like a mass exodus. So
Sure.
now's the time. That's what they're asking for. So let's see what we can do to deliver.
Well, that communication comment is really interesting too. The difference in what women seek and what men seek, because so many trucking companies are going after females right now because it's such a low overall percentage of their driving populations, like this untapped market for potential drivers to enter, right? And so being able to effectively communicate to both parties seems like a no brainer if you're trying to do that well and retain those drivers.
That's right. And, I think historically, um, drivers it's been such in demand that if they weren't getting what they needed, or, they finally had the worst day ever and just decided this is enough,
Yep,
a lot of times the natural reaction would just be just quit, just up and quit. You're going to get something
sure.
someplace else. So it's an industry pretty well known for that. But sometimes people will just up and quit, and they never even bothered to have the conversation with the organization. Hey, I'm getting frustrated. Here's what I need. This, what can you do to
Yeah.
accommodate? I'm not getting enough home time. I'm not getting enough miles. I want to be making more money. Whatever it is that you're dealing
Hmm.
with, your schedule, a lot of times people will just assume and leave
Right.
versus striking up the conversation. In fact, um, I had the opportunity to engage with a driver on Road Dog Radio, and he was basically saying, "Hey, I'm getting up there in years. I worked with my children, and now I'm wanting to work with my grandchildren in doing this
Mm,
particular type of car racing. It's kind of something that's been in the family for a long time."
sure.
And
Yeah.
it was concerned that his organization wasn't going to be able to alter the schedule so to accommodate the racing whatever
Sure.
season,
Yeah. His
so
passion. Yeah.
he'd
Yeah.
have that flexibility and the passion. And
Yeah.
but he was like, you know what, you're right, I should ask, I should look into this, because he was thinking he'd have to outright quit, leave for the season, and then try to find something, after it was
Yeah.
over.
Again.
Well, if you've been a valuable resource for them all this time, you don't know till you ask. So I
Right.
think
Sure.
it's, teaching both sides how to have those kind of conversations. And,
Yeah.
the answer may be no, but
Mhm.
you don't know till you ask.
So I also think it's really interesting too, because you think about a structure of running an asset-based trucking company, and usually, I mean, certainly, I believe one of the toughest jobs is the dispatcher, right? The person that's managing a group of drivers. And I always think, the relational components of what we're talking about, it is such a balancing act. And some of the asset-based trucking companies that I've seen do it really well actually added a layer on top of the driver dispatch function, right? Where they might be balancing, anywhere from 35 to 55 drivers at a given time, which is
Right.
just crazy to think about. Like the logistics behind that, what happens is they become very tactical, right? In nature, where it's shoveling out job for job for job or load for load for load. And the more they get on their plate, the less of a personal or human element that they're able to actually have to have a relationship with that driver. And so I've seen some asset based trucking companies that do it really well, where they actually add in a relationship manager
Yep.
to oversee groups of driver dispatch or driver managers and truly call to form this personal relationship that you're talking about with the driver, because the actual dispatcher might not have time in their day to day to spend 30 minutes just catching up on family and life and things that are important for the driver to be connected to the company. And I always think that's really cool whenever we can hear examples of ways in which trucking organizations are just operating differently than the pack.
Absolutely. So the driver manager role has been something up and coming, has been highly successful. We're also seeing organizations creating more formal mentor programs. So
Hmm.
pairing
Sure.
up, drivers with folks that have been there for a longer period of time, or
Yeah.
people that are more like them, so that, they can, learn from more seasoned drivers. At the same time, I actually just was talking to a CEO this morning for a fairly, mid-size, small to mid-size carrier, who's was experienced 160% turnover, and
Wow.
largely driven a lot of times between, as you mentioned, that relationship between the driver and the dispatcher. In fact, on our happiness survey, when we talk about what's important, most people will say the quality of my manager. With the drivers, it's my
Yeah.
dispatcher, right? That's my
Exactly.
day-to-day
Exactly.
person. So
Yep.
if that relationship isn't going well, even if everything else, you're being paid well, everything else is in play, it still doesn't matter. It's such a crucial role. They
Absolutely.
were, were recognizing that that was a problem, and that, the dispatchers sometimes get so, consumed with, doing the job, the relationship piece falls to the side. So they started a rotation program to bring the dispatchers in to the corporate office, where drivers were coming through, and being able to,
Oh,
sort of live in your shoes for a period and kind of meet people, and it's going extraordinarily well. So I think sometimes it's just a matter of investing in the training and in giving people the opportunity to change their perspective, um, and and work on the other side. It
yeah.
helps them do their job better for sure.
No, I love organizations that actually connect with the drivers, like you're talking about, physically connect with them at the office, where it's not, the corporate office is somewhere that the drivers never see, right?
Right.
If the office employees have no idea what life of a driver is like, then they probably shouldn't be an office employer at a trucking company, right? Because that's what's making the whole thing go. And so, yeah, I mean, I absolutely love when organizations welcome the drivers in to talk with their teams and their management and have open door policies with their executive team. I mean, that's what makes some of these trucking companies so special. So that's helpful. Yeah. Thanks for the insight. I think that's really good. And what unique findings from the driver happiness report too. That's great. I'm just curious too, to kind of poke your brain a little bit, Beth. I mean, you're a female founder and certainly a business leader in a male dominated space. Maybe share a little bit more about mentoring and how you really think about helping to advance other women, specifically in this field or industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something I'm super passionate about, have always been. And
Hmm.
I'm a member of the Women in Trucking Association. Um,
Yeah,
that's it's been an incredible experience. It's a great way to meet people sort of like-minded with, similar aspirations on,
absolutely.
helping to lift each other up and support each other in the industry. And have been fortunate enough, I do a program there called Speed Mentoring.
Okay.
It's something I learned and actually started earlier in my career. I've done it both inside of corporations, and I've actually done it even at the high school level.
Oh, wow.
It was a program called Food for Thought. And,
Okay.
having been in HR all these years, what I often hear from folks early in their career, even coming out of high school, in college, trying to figure out what they want to do, everybody has this impression that, you sort of have to have it figured out. You need to know. And what I like to do is highlight all of the people that don't have linear careers. I mean, your
Sure.
career is the compilation of these transferable skills that you build up that are in your toolkit, that you, because of the experiences that you've had, sometimes it takes an experience to learn something about what you're not good at, or the type of leader that
Yeah,
you don't want to be. And you
exactly.
take all of
Yeah,
these and carve them together, and then transfer them as you move to different roles, different organizations and industries. And I
sure.
wanted to highlight for people, especially the down all the way down at the student level, that these are all very successful people, but they didn't have it all figured out. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a very low percentage of people who kind of pop out and, they report, what do I want to be when I grow up? And they actually become that profession, or take a linear path to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've had everything from somebody who started out, as a grade school teacher, to, is now a podiatrist, and actually
Yeah.
trained aquatic animals, like, working at SeaWorld, like with Shamu, and then went on
Yeah.
to like crazy paths that people took. A
Yeah.
geologist who actually is like heading up marketing for one of the largest Fortune 500 companies now.
Not
Um,
weird.
yeah, really interesting, and to
Yeah.
talk about the path and what got them there, and
Sure.
everybody speaks to that. Along the way they had mentors,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I think,
Absolutely.
teaching people what is mentoring, how does it work. You have to be active if you're a mentee seeking a mentor.
Sure.
What's that role? How do you have to make sure you're getting the most out of it? And there's a lot of people out there, actually, surprisingly, that would love to mentor. They just don't know how to go about doing it. So
Hmm.
I kind
Yeah.
of like that matchmaking of mentors and mentees. And at Women in Trucking, I do a speed mentoring. So it's a simulation where you get to chat with and hear the career story of a couple of different mentors in 15-minute increments. It kind of rotate around
Mm.
the room, And
Sure.
believe it or not, over the years, many one-to-one mentorship relationships were born out of that
Born.
event.
Yeah.
And it
Sure.
continues
Yeah.
to grow, and now they're having a full program on it. So it's that type of thing that we have to work harder at to help each other. And this year I loved it because we had a student who won the scholarship to be at the Women in Trucking Conference. She was just graduating with a degree in supply chain logistics. And
Wow.
she was, obviously in her job search. And so she joined the mentoring session,
Yeah.
and she was so taken back by all the people that she met and all the different roles and levels and how people were willing to help her. And
Yeah.
we did a live, so the entire group got into that was in the room, all the women,
Yeah.
and we went through and lined up how many years we had in the industry. And she did a whole little a write up on it and a video on LinkedIn,
Oh, how
and
neat.
was able to walk away with a lot of really meaningful connections and people who reached out to help. So people of all ages and all
Yeah.
years of experience and all different segments of the industry, safety, engineering, you name it.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's such a wonderful Women in Trucking is an unbelievable organization, and it's been wonderful to watch it grow so significantly over the years. But I love that event. That's great that you host that, and it's just exciting for people starting their careers and exploring supply chain roles. Right? It's so much different than it was 10, even 20 years ago, and all the available opportunity now. It's a fun it's a fun spot to be in. So that's great. That's a really neat component of Women in Trucking. I didn't know you were involved in that. That's great.
Yeah, and I would say the other one that's very discipline specific is TMSA.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Sure.
with TMSA, you get all of the, transportation marketing and sales professionals. And
Yeah.
what an amazing group of people, highly
Yeah.
engaged, highly invested in each
Sure.
other, in their success and learning. So lots of like sort of natural connections and mentoring happening there.
Yeah.
True
Yeah.
desire to learn from one another. So I would say that that one is like another great one for anybody that are in those disciplines that are looking to
Yeah.
take
Tap
themselves to
in.
the next level for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation, Beth. We always like to end with a fun fact, and I think today it would be really interesting just to hear from you what you're most optimistic about in the upcoming year. So, kicking off January, coming off a pretty tough 2023. What are you most optimistic about for 2024 and the year ahead?
I am most optimistic that 2024 is going to bring great growth, I believe, spawned by innovation.
Oh,
Because
great.
I feel like there's a lot of folks that, have been really digging in during
Hmm.
this time to take advantage of the
Sure.
opportunity. And they're looking at their organization, the health of the organization, their employee voice, and even all their processes, frankly, and what,
Yeah.
what they can do to streamline and get themselves fit. And I think it's pushing people also to figure out how they can scale and
Mhm.
grow through partnerships and just kind of looking around with people that they can team up with. So I feel like we're on yet another level of
Mhm.
being able to spawn more growth in the industry through innovation and greater collaboration across the industry than I think we've seen in a long time.
Wonderful. Well, Beth, thank you so much for being on the hot seat today. Really enjoyed the conversation.